You never know who you're going to bump into at Arrowhead Stadium. And last night I had the opportunity, as we watched the Chiefs hang on to beat the Ravens 27-20 in the NFL season opener, to meet Joel Weinberg. He's an Israeli resident, a lecturer of Middle Eastern politics. He was at the game last night. We met through our good buddy and good friend David Block. And Joel is with us on KCMO Talk Radio. Joel, good morning. How'd you like that Chiefs game last night, my friend?
Good morning. Very impressive.
Yeah, was that your first? Was that your first NFL game?
No, I've been to a few NFL games before, but it was a great game.
It was
truly amazing.
It was. Well, it was great to meet you last night, and obviously, tomorrow is exactly 11 months to the day since October 7th. And I just wanted to get the pulse from you as a citizen, someone who has spent obviously the large part of your life there. I know you spent a couple of years here in the States growing up, and you've been in Israel ever since. What have these last 11 months been like for you, for the Israeli people, and what has been missed by American media over these last 11 months?
Well, it's been a very challenging period. It started with shock, then having to need to deal with the new reality, and it's been extremely challenging, even though, again, I live in Jerusalem, so we were far less affected, and life in Jerusalem for most of the time has gone on relatively normal, but we've been down in the bomb shelters a dozen times because of missiles that were fired towards us. So that was a serious awakening call, I think, to the whole country. It's, I would say, people see the big picture to an extent and miss the small anecdotes. As an example, in the States, you couldn't picture a few percent of the American population being taken away from their home and sent to reserve duty for 100 days. I have friends who've been in the reserve for over 200 days since it started, and that cuts off the economy. These are people who are anything from a server to the CEO of companies, leaving everything behind and going to fight and to protect the country. So it's an extremely challenging time, and there's almost nobody in the country who hasn't been affected, who hasn't lost friends, who hasn't lost relatives, because we are a very small country, and when you have close to 2,000 casualties, that touches everybody and hits home. So those are some of the small anecdotes of what's been going on.
Take me through who, and I know you shared this with me last night, but I was surprised by it, how long individuals are in the Israeli reserves for, and how long they're in the army for.
Well, you do a 3-year stint if you're a man. If you're a woman, you do a 2-year stint. And by law, everybody has to serve in the military. And then you stay in active reserve duty for 20, sometimes, let's say, pilots will do 25 or even 30 years of reserve duty, and many people volunteer to go beyond that time. So you're in the Army through your 40s, and you train every year, you do active duty, and in a time of war like now, you'll be doing months on end of reserve duty.
So then when it comes to the economy, which you just alluded to there, how do you try to keep an economy afloat in Israel when you do have, as you noted, 100,000 folks who have been called up to the reserves in the wake of what happened last October?
It's very challenging because many people have positions that can't be filled. Like Israel's famous for its high-tech industry. And an awful lot of people in the high-tech industry developed some of those skills when they were serving in units in the Israeli army that are connected to the high-tech industry and the intelligence and the Air Force. And those people are called up, and people will do multiple shifts if they can to try to fill in for that. Mm-hmm. The economy tries to keep on going, but our agriculture has been horribly hit because both in the north and in the south are some of the centers of the agriculture, and people were forced to be evacuated. So you have thousands, maybe tens of thousands of acres that have been abandoned. So that also is hitting the economy. So the economy strives to stay afloat, but also keep in mind that Israel is spending billions and billions of dollars on our defense now, in addition to the military having to cover the salaries of the people. Because if you, in reserve, the Army more or less pays your salary that you would have received in your civilian job. So it's challenging. And one of the ways that Israel's dealing with is it's expanding its national debt. And this year's debt will be over 4%.
Wow. Okay. So, yeah, it's got to have an impact then on the country's budget for sure. Joel Weinberg is here, Israeli resident, lecturer of Middle Eastern politics. Had the chance to meet him at the Chiefs game last night, which obviously turned out very well for Kansas City, 27-20 win over the Baltimore Ravens. So what about the future? What is, I know, you see what's happening here in the States and some of the nonsense on college campuses, ceasefire now, all this stuff. But it seems to me everyone always asks Israel to be the one that has to back down, that has to, offer up some kind of a deal. It doesn't seem like that is imminent. So what should we be watching going forward as Israel continues to try to just, fight for freedom and peace in the region in large part?
It's a very good question, and unfortunately there's no good answer. Israel, on one hand, we have to see how prevent anything like October 7th from happening again. And the sad reality is in Gaza, more or less, the majority of the fighting is over because estimates are 60, maybe more percent of the Hamas fighters have been killed in the fighting or have been arrested by Israel. But the southern part is to a great extent over, but we still have 100 hostages who are being kept underground, and until they come home, I don't know if we could even see the beginning of the end. And then how do we prevent those humongous amounts of arms being brought in once again to the Gaza Strip? But when we finish that, we have other issues that are not resolved. We have the North and the Hezbollah, and they have, again, with the Hamas's power is a joke compared to what the Hezbollah have. They have enough missiles to reign over Israel, and literally tens of thousands of missiles that are endangering Israel at any set time. So what do we do with the North? Do we hope that the battle ends and work on ending the Iranian regime because everything goes back to Iran?
Yes.
All the arms come from Iran. So until the Iranian issue is solved, the issues that we're dealing with will not be solved. So the question is, but at the same time, Israel has to go back to a level of normalcy because, as an example, in the last year, there's been no tourism to Israel, and tourism is a major source of income to the Israeli society, the Israeli economy. So how do we bring the people back to their homes? There are over 100,000 people who have been evacuated and are now living in hotels or living in temporary residence. And the longer it goes on, the less of the chances that they will wind up wanting to move back to their original homes if they're still standing.
That's a good point.
We have to try to bring Israel back to a level of normalcy, but as long as the fighting is going on, that'll be difficult. So the fighting in Gaza is not over, but it's at a much, much lower intensity than it was a few months ago.
Yeah.
In the north, you don't read about it much in the States, but we're talking about 50 to 100 missiles being fired on a daily basis from Lebanon into Israel. Again, when they succeed, when they hit a village and kill 8 children, you hear about that. But when houses are being destroyed or it's 1 or 2 people being killed, but for society to have to deal with burying their children on a daily basis, it's a very hard situation. And again, so we have to decide where we're moving in the north. We have the Houthis down in Lebanon, down in Yemen, and then how do we deal with Iran, which is the biggest question. And to be honest, Israel does not really have the ability to totally take out even the Iranian nuclear program, let alone their missiles, even though one good thing that came out of this war is the one time Iran did attack Israel, we now know that the quality of their ICBMs, or not their ICBMs, but their ballistic missiles are not as good as we feared they were before the war.
Okay.
So that's one redeeming.
That's a very silver lining to everything going on right now. Joel Weinberg, Israeli resident, lecturer of Middle Eastern politics, had the chance to meet him last night at Arrowhead through our buddy David Block. Joel, thank you so much for being here. Safe travels, and would love to stay in touch and talk to you again soon.
I'm at your disposal.
All right.
And thanks to modern-day technology, you can even reach me in Israel.
That's great. I got your number there, Joel. Safe travels, my man.
Very good. All the best. Thank you
too.
much.
You bet. There you go. Very interesting. It does all tie back to the Iranians, and that certainly is a silver lining if you want to look at it from what he said there at the very end. But it all ties back to the Iranians.